It is indeed a great pleasure for me to give the inaugural address in this very topical and important roundtable on the mobile and agency banking. As we all know that in the aftermath of financial crisis of 2008, the worldwide financial inclusion has become a very important topic. As you would reflect that it is an important item in the agenda of G20 as well, and post 2009, in every summit declaration of G20, you will find the mention about the financial inclusion. Of course, in India, these efforts have preceded the crisis. They were already on, and Reserve Bank of India, right from 2006, had laid out a roadmap towards the financial inclusion. But those of you who are familiar, and probably in the course of roundtable you will get familiar, that recently launched a scheme in India which is known as Prime Minister Jan Dhan Yojana. It is a plan for the financial inclusion of all excluded household, is probably taking it to a different level, and it sets a very ambitious target of covering each excluded household exceeding 50 million in number within a short period of few months. So that is something which is right now on in a very mission mode. So when we are talking about the financial inclusion, of course it would include the opening of the account, the remittances, and obviously remittances cannot be separated. They are an inseparable part of financial inclusion. And everywhere, and more so in a country like India, the remittances have a very significant impact, both macroeconomic as well as microeconomic. Macroeconomic in the sense, the impact on the region which is receiving the remittances, and microeconomic in the sense for the recipient per se of the remittance. So this is in this context, I must congratulate CAFRAL that there could not have been a more topical and important subject for this roundtable, and particularly few suggestions I have heard in the inaugural opening remarks of Mr. Gopal Krishnan itself. And as I would be discussing with you, that a number of regulatory initiatives and the thinking are at the various stages at this point of time. So I am sure that the input which would be coming from this roundtable after your very meaningful deliberations of 1.5 days, I am sure that they would provide us very meaningful regulatory inputs. Now, the two phrases, mobile banking and agency banking, both have one aspect common. And of course, I am not talking about the language where the banking looks like common, but I am rather hinting to the linkage of banking activities to the non-banking activities, or non-banking entities to be more accurate. In both these delivery channels, banks are heavily dependent on partnership. Let me remove it from the. So, as I was mentioning, in both these delivery channels, banks are heavily dependent on the partnership with other entities, mobile, telecom service providers, and agents. And is not always in the form of outsourcing. Both have very significant difference, because in the outsourcing, we are largely talking about handing over the back office jobs to these entities, and front always remains the banking entity. But in this model, I think both are on the front, and at times it's quite possible that the entities forming alliance with the banking partner probably may have a more prominent front end than the bank itself. So this is the model we are talking about. And so I would say that it is more a partnership rather than a pure outsourcing model. Now, developments in technology, particularly mobile telephony, as well as the growing imperative of achieving financial inclusion, have also contributed greatly to such partnership in recent times. And the trend is not just in India, but in many other countries around the globe. Recently, the Committee for Payment and Market Infrastructure, popularly known as BIS, has published this is mobile telephony. This is a little bit with the okay. Now, if our payment happens with this kind of lag, then probably we would be failing in our model. It has to be very instant. Anyway, coming back, so the more popularly known as BIS has published the report of the working group on non-banks in retail payment, which highlight the growing role of non-bank entities in many activities across many stages of the payment chain. And agency banking experience of a few countries is also featured in the report in the context of financial inclusion. So now let me quickly outline some of the developments that have taken place in India in the area of agency banking as well as mobile banking. Coming to agency banking, see, our concept of financial inclusion, it aims at providing access to appropriate financial products and services. We are not merely talking about a payment service or only remittance. So with that concept of financial inclusion, we are talking about the savings, we are talking about some investment product, remittance, credit, and insurance. The whole basket of products which are appropriate and suitable to the target audience, that is what is our aim, our concept of financial inclusion. We should be able to go to the all sections of the society, which is affordable and accessible through mainstream institutions, and more importantly, it should be in a very fair and transparent manner. Now, just to understand in the context of a country like India, the dimension of financial inclusion which we are talking about, we are talking about roughly 1.2 billion heads. We are talking about 29 states, 6 union territories, 600 districts, and 600,000, more than 600,000 villages. This is the dimension we are talking about when we are discussing the financial inclusion efforts. Then adding to this is a multicultural, multi-ethnic society, and also featured by a low level of general literacy. So by any yardstick, it is a very humongous task. And despite a large variety of bank and branch network, only half of the population has access to bank account, the very basic minimum of a formal financial inclusion. Hence, the objective of achieving financial inclusion through brick and mortar banking alone is quite obvious, would have made the task almost impossible. But there was no other choice but to adopt the agency banking through the business correspondent and business facilitators. Now, the agent or BC can be anyone. It can be a village grocer shop. It can be the agents of the large telecom company. And for convenience of operations, there is some recruitment for the BCs, some requirement for the BCs to be attached to a branch of a bank. So within a particular number or within a particular geographical segment, so that it becomes a kind of hub and spoke model, and which will serve many purposes from the viewpoint of keeping an oversight or the control or the cash management or the customer redressal grievance. That is the kind of architecture we are talking about. And then BCs are permitted to open account, facilitate remittance, and as well as ultimately As some of you already know, and many of you would get to know in the course of discussion, that a large number of social benefits transfer from the state to the individuals and the families. And it will be a very important component that all these accounts which are opened and ultimately all these social benefits transmit to those accounts through the channels which we are talking about. I think that would be a very important component in the success of whole financial inclusion drive and keeping and making these accounts meaningful. Now, just to give you a sense of what has been achieved so far, at the close of March 2014, after the banking correspondent channel was opened for the banking sector, there are almost 250,000 or 250,000 banking correspondents are there. And putting the banking correspondents, the brick and mortar branches in the rural India, and also some other initiatives like the mobile banking, etc. There the total outlets are 384,000. That is what the dimension is today. Added to this will be another, say, roughly around 61,000 BC outlets, which are also in the cities and in urban India. Now, this is a dimension of the agency banking, which is existing as of now. Now, coming to mobile banking, in India, the structure, the regulatory structure for a payment system in the country is contained in the Payment and Settlement System Act 2007. In India, the PSS Act clearly designates the Reserve Bank of India as the regulator and also vests the power with the bank to authorize the payment systems and set standards for payment and settlement system in the country. Now, under the powers granted by the PSSA, Payment and Settlement Act, the bank had issued the first set of guidelines for mobile banking in the year 2009, recognizing the importance of this delivery channel. Now, I need not tell this audience that what are the fine distinction or differences between the mobile banking and mobile payment. But for the time being and for the purpose of this conference, I would restrict myself only to the mobile banking and would not delve into the area of mobile payment as such. Now, as on date, 85 banks have been permitted to provide mobile banking facility, of which 68 banks are providing this service to their customers. Though there are over 924 million mobile subscriptions in the country, the number of connections linked to bank account is not even 10%. During 2013-14, the volume of mobile payment transaction was around 94.7 million transactions and with a value of something like 225 billion rupees. I think in this context, what Mr. Gopal Krishnan mentioned in the opening remarks about the making the mobile number mandatory in the account opening or having a mobile number registry, I think they are quite meaningful things and certainly deserves a further look into it. Of course, we have to be conscious about the choice being available to the customer and maybe some other related aspects. But certainly it is worth examining. Now, barring few countries where mobile banking has been quite successful, and Professor Dunguri is sitting beside me, certainly would be sharing a lot of experience in that area, which is no doubt influenced by the right environmental factors or other way, absence of some of the environmental factors. I think it goes both way. But in most countries, adoption of mobile banking or mobile payments has been quite below potential. Of course, I do not include here the uses of mobile phones or mobile devices as an access channel for internet banking, etc. But rather focus on the delivery of financial and payment services from the mobile device itself. That is the very specific point we are talking about. Now, without being too overwhelmed by the mobile density in the country, an objective analysis would reveal, and I think these are the point which needs to be deliberated in this round table. So the various reasons for the state of affairs, now technical aspects such as the types of handsets, variety of operating system, encryption requirement, interoperable platforms or the lack of it, standardized communication structure, ease of downloading application, time lag in activation, etc., combined with the operational difficulties of onboarding merchants and customers, customer ownership issue, I think which would be a topic of very intense debate and discussion, I am sure, in this round table. They have an impact of level of deployment as well as the adoption of mobile banking services. Now, issues of coordination and cooperation between banks and telcos, as I mentioned, is very important aspect, and it can either act as a driver of these entire efforts or it can be a barrier to these efforts. Let me briefly give some outline about the initiative taken by Reserve Bank of India in this regard. Now, in order to optimally harness the potential of the channel for providing accessible, convenient, as well as cost-effective services to banking customers, the RBI had set up the Technical Committee on Mobile Banking, which was chaired by Shri B. Sambamurthy, Director of IDRBT. The committee studied the challenges faced by the banks in providing mobile banking to customers and also examined the options alternatives to propagate mobile banking in the country, including the feasibility of using encrypted SMS-based fund transfer through a handset and which is agnostic to application for expanding the reach of mobile banking in the country. Now, the committee has also recommended the need for standardization or standardizing the practices in onboarding of customers and use of alternate channels for registration without the need for branch visit, simplification, and uniformity in the process of MPIN generation across banks, etc. Similarly, on the technical side too, the committee had made recommendations such as setting up a common interoperable USD platform for mobile banking, having a common mobile banking application with standard menu of operations, preferably using STK, that is the SIM toolkit applications for mobile banking. The committee had also recommended that mobile network operators ought to actively support the loading, distribution of this single mobile banking application on all new SIMs as well as existing ones. Now, in order to take forward the recommendations of the technical committee, the Reserve Bank of India recently organized a conference on mobile banking, and that was in June 2014. In a sense, this conference can take further from whatever was discussed or achieved in that conference. Following that conference, this was represented by banks, MNOs, Indian Bank Association, NPCI, and IDRBT. And based on the deliberation, two technical groups were formed. Then with the representation from all the relevant stakeholders. Now, one group was to look into the setting up the standards for onboarding mobile banking customers. And the second group was for the setting the standard for industry agreement between banks and MNOs for handling customer grievance. Now, my understanding is, as far as the first group is concerned, they had several rounds of discussions and probably they are nearing some kind of finality in their recommendations. Obviously, the task for the second group is much larger and it may take some more time. But my sense is that the deliberations and conclusions which would be arriving out of this round table, it would be very meaningful if they are transmitted to these groups immediately, so that the group can take cognizance of the relevant things while framing their final recommendations. Uh, Now, there is no doubt that such uniform applications and practices will go a long way in enabling greater adoption of mobile banking services in the country, as it would eliminate the differences in customer experience across different banks and pave the way for interoperability. There also is need, and like the experiment is done, like enabling payment for non-customers using ATM, which has already been made operational by quite a number of banks. Now, another case in point in India has been the adoption of USSD, channel of delivery for mobile banking. Even as banks began offering application-based and SMS-based channels, few banks also began to explore the USSD channel for mobile banking. Now, despite the infrastructure being in place from the telco side, there were difficulties encountered in finalizing the commercial terms between the banks and telcos, and also agreement on customer ownership. I think this is what I did mention in my opening remarks also, because the customer is at the same time customer of both, for the bank as well as of the telecom operator, and now depends that who has a larger ownership of the customer. As the situation was heading towards the gridlock and few banks were getting into commercial agreement with one or more telcos to offer USSD services to their mobile banking customer, the TRAI came out with the mobile banking guidelines for telco, setting the ceiling on the tariff, and I'm sure Mr. Sinha would be speaking about the same. Now, this has effectively dealing the any charges that bank may levy to their customers for doing banking transactions on the channel, and thus help to break the gridlock and pave the way for building a common USSD platform, bringing interoperability in the system. Now, NPCI has played a major role. They were mandated with the entire the payment system in the country. And since Mr. Hota is sitting here, and I'm sure that he would be a part of deliberation, so I would not encroach on his territory to talking much about what NPCI is doing. But suffice to say that the introduction in innovation like IMPS, they are a very meaningful development. And how these initiatives are to be taken further, what would be the, what are the impediments, it's something which he would be certainly discussing about. Initially, when the IMPS was introduced, there was a requirement of something like MMID, and then from the customer feedback, it was realized that probably the user friendliness is less in degree, and they further improved upon it. And I think since then, they have also developing the NUUP, as they call, the National Uniform USD Platform. So surely all those will come during the discussion. Now, only our thinking that why the USSD channel, that why we chose to promote the USSD channel to provide an interoperable mobile banking facility in the country. The reasons are fairly obvious. It works on all GSM handsets, does not need installation of any application, but at the same time provides an application-like interactive menu, a more secure than SMS, does not require GPRS or internet connection, and is also available on roaming. Hence, these features fit the requirement of our ecosystem, which has a lot of low-end handsets with many users not having an internet connection on their mobile phones. And last but not least, a significant advantage provided by this channel is that even the people who are number literate but who are not words literate, particularly in English, they can also use it with ease, and I think that is something which is very significant in the situation in which we are operating. The downside is, of course, that it does not give the flexibility of an application-based service, but then I would tend to believe that that alternative is always available for those who choose to opt for it. So I think this is another area we can think about it. Now coming briefly to again the contemporary topic of payment bank, let me briefly touch upon the same. The Committee on Comprehensive Financial Services for Small Business and Low Income Household, more popularly known as Dr. Nachiket More Committee, and on which I was also a member, had also examined the issue relevant to an ubiquitous payment network and universal access for savings, and recommended inter alia that given the difficulties being faced by the prepaid payment instrument issuers, PPI issuers, and the underlying prudential concerns associated with this model, the existing and new PPI issuer application should instead be required to apply for a payment bank license or become business correspondent. In addition, in his Union Budget speech for 2014-15, the Honorable Finance Minister of India, he announced that, and I quote, RBI will create a framework for licensing small banks and other differentiated banks serving niche interest, local area banks, payment banks, etc., are contemplated to meet credit and remittance needs of small businesses, unorganized sectors, low-income households, farmers, and migrant workforce. Now, RBI has since already come out with a draft guideline for setting up a payment bank in the country. The primary objective of setting up a payment bank is to further financial inclusion by providing 1. Small saving account, and 2. Payment remittance services to migrant labor workforce, low-income households, small business, other unorganized sector entities and other users by enabling high-volume, low-value transactions in deposits and payment remittances services in a secure technology-driven environment. Now, the existing non-bank PPI issuers authorized under the PSS Act and other entities such as NBFCs, corporate BCs, mobile telephone companies, supermarket chains, the supermarket chains, companies in real sector cooperatives and public sector entities are the likely candidate to be eligible to apply to set up a payment banks. Payments and remittance services can be provided through various channels, including branches, BCs, and mobile banking. The payment remittance services would include acceptance of funds at one end through various channels, including branches and BCs, and payment of cash at the other end, again through branches, BCs, and ATMs. Cash out can also be permitted at point of sales terminal locations as per the extent instructions which are already issued under the PSS Act. Now, before I conclude, let me briefly touch upon the role of the regulator. Let me say a few words about the expectations from the regulator's side and our take on that. Now, no denying the fact that the regulators receive a lot of flack for being circumspect, stifling innovation, and being reactive. So agency banking and mobile banking is also an area where a lot of criticism has come our way for being rather tardy and guarded in its approach. I might not have appreciated the approach of RBI myself, because till 3 months back I was on the other side of the fence sitting as a commercial banker. But now, having crossed the fence, I can see the merit in the approach. And I would say that the regulators are by very design are meant to be that way. If you consider it a flaw, then probably it is a manufacturing defect which is bound to remain like that. They are also ones who are expected to throw the proverbial sand on the wheel. So regulations are sought to ensure fair play, transparency, and at the same time curtail exuberance. One approach for which RBI has been roundly criticized is so-called obsession with the bank-led model for promoting financial inclusion. And I am sure this will be a topic of heated debate during this roundtable also. Now, one must appreciate that financial inclusion does not mean only on remittance or a saving bank account. And I said in the beginning also that our definition of financial inclusion covers a suite of products: a basic saving account, credit facility, micro insurance, together with remittance facility, and also a investment product. Our view is that only the mainstream regulated financial players are capable of bringing in this vision of financial inclusion in the country. But simultaneously, we do realize that the other peripheral players like the NBFCs, telcos, etc., serve as very important adjuncts in the whole process. Hence, we have permitted the banks to have alliances with the other service providers. As regulator, we have traded cautiously for a couple of reasons more. One is to, of course, the guard against the potential concerns of the money laundering. Those concerns were there. And the other was around the customer grievance redressal. As we discussed in the beginning, the two front and maybe equally prominent, the customer redressal should not become an area of tossing across the net. As I have discussed above, we are working on building adequate safeguards and progressively allowing greater participation of other players in our financial inclusion initiative. The impending licensing of payment bank is a measured step in that direction. Now, to conclude, given the growing importance of financial inclusion in the country, coupled with the almost ubiquitous presence of mobile phone, it's not surprising that all stakeholders, policymakers, regulators, banks, MNOs are working together to harness the potential of both these channels, mobile banking as well as agent banking model, as a means of delivering banking services to the people and to hasten the process of financial inclusion. It is no doubt a complex matrix. As I mentioned, we have adopted the bank-led model to financial inclusion. Then banks are using the services of business correspondent and facilitators. Telcos are also functioning as BCs of banks. Banks need the cooperation of telcos in offering banking services. And some of these telcos or BCs are also offering mobile-based e-money, mobile wallet, products of their own, and so on. So there is a lot of intermingling and complexity in the whole ecosystem as it is prevalent now. So I am therefore glad that this forum of CEOs from various stakeholder segments would deliberate on these issues, which are very important from the policy perspective, and the presence of top executives from various other countries and also the international organization, I think clearly establishes the importance and the contemporary relevance of the topic which has been chosen. I have looked through the booklet prepared by the CAFRAL for setting the tone for this conference, and I know that they have already posed a number of questions under the various topics which need to be deliberated. Let me just expand some of them, or probably add a couple of my own questions which I can leave on the table for this round table to deliberate. The first I would say, and in the banking community, banking friends are also present here, whether the banking correspondents are viewed more as a compliance issue by banks. Can they become responsible partner in the business plan formulation of banks? That's the question one. The second question, which is always concerning us as a regulator, is how can customer awareness be enhanced? What can be done to influence or hasten the change in customer behavior towards adoption of mobile-based payment? I think that will be very crucial even for the successful of any business model which is laid out. Now, the third very important question is there a conflict of interest between different roles of the same stakeholders? And to elaborate, For instance, the entity being a mobile wallet provider and also acting as a business correspondent, whether one facet will cannibalize the other. And since the international community is present here, it would be important to hear from them that what has been the experience in this regard in other countries. Other thing which can be discussed is about what have been the remuneration models adopted for successful agent banking across the globe. And finally, while P2P transfer or remittances dominate the mobile banking transactions, particularly in India, how can we put in place a system for seamless merchant payments at point of sales through mobile banking, somewhat similar to card payment? Is it the proverbial push that is needed for mobile banking to take off in the true sense? And in this context, interestingly, yesterday over the dinner table, I had quite a long discussion with Professor Dungu about the experience in Kenya, and it was quite an engaging conversation. And I must confess that I got quite a few insights. So I'm sure that in his presentation we'll get an insight into it. I conclude here. Only I would like to say, and it is even for myself, that when these kind of discussions are taking place, and when we have a very wide spectrum of experience available, it would be very important to shed all the prejudices and egos, and we always be prepared to celebrate and follow the successes which others have achieved. With that note, thank you very much for a patient hearing, and I wish this round table all the success and very meaningful outcome. Thank you.